right, good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started officially. My name is Scott Buchanan. I'm MEP subject matter expert for Autodesk, and the technical session that we're going to be going through this morning is Beyond the Modeling with Revit for MEP. And before we get started, not certain how much was shared, but I apologize for not being there in person. So I am based out of Indianapolis, while in a pretty short flight. There's no direct flights for me. I'm supposed to be connecting through Chicago, but my plane is apparently coming from Houston. We've caught any of the weather issues down in the Texas area. About 3 feet of rain came in unexpectedly and things like that, so it's caused a lot of flight delays. So long story short, I was unable to get any type of flight out there yesterday evening once that cancellation paper. There were no flight flights. I think that until about 10:15 this morning. Obviously custom through there. So I appreciate you still being there in attendance. Something in addition to what will happen beyond this presentation, I am going to do another presentation recorded, kind of an official one, and we will have that posted and made available for everyone. There's also going to be time allocated for Q&A. If we're unable to have that form of interaction today, I've shared with the candidate team that we're happy to have questions submitted and can be filtered through and provided over to me. I'd be more than happy to follow up and address those again. Would much rather be there in person doing this. So with that being said, I did alter my presentation a little bit last night because when I do things in person compared to virtually, I get a different sense of things as I'm going through content and things of that nature. So I did make a few edits to it. When I do the official recorded one, I'll probably go back to my original. I may include video. I haven't go off that far ahead just yet, but just want to make sure I could gauge time a little bit better without seeing everyone there. A little introduction about myself. So I have been with Autodesk for just about 6 months now, but prior to that I did full service implementation services for Autodesk MEP software, plant software, and the fabrication technology as well. I spent about 14 years doing that with a very large Autodesk partner. And from a Revit standpoint, I've been using that since version 1, when it was Revit System 1, a very painful time. No height tool was in that very first version, so I was making funny looking height fittings out of duct and wanting with that. And those that may have experience with AutoCAD MEP in the room, I've used that since it was Autodesk Building Systems, or ABS, and started with that back in 2003. So a lot of experience when it comes to we'll say 3D world and moving into it from an MEP standpoint, and seen a lot of growth with it as well. And spent a lot of times, I mentioned, traveling North America, working with a lot of different engineering firms or AE firms or AEC or fabrication shops. So I get a very wide range of exposure to not only those individual companies, but just kind of the workflows that they're utilizing, and kind of seeing what works in some areas compared to others, and what works on the west coast of the United States doesn't necessarily work on the east coast, and what may work in Toronto there may not work in Vancouver. So a lot of those things, but what I wanted to do with this session was kind of share what I'm seeing firms doing in some aspects as it relates to MEP, and really kind of getting away from just the modeling side of things. And if you're unable to kind of figure out my slide there, if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, feel free. You can take a shot of that QR code. It should pop up on your phone and automatically take it and connect there, or feel free to back in that. So our objective, learning objective through. First off, again, as I was starting earlier, one of my started away from just creating a fancy model. Right, you're getting the documents created that you're doing in AutoCAD or whatever software. But what comes after that? So how can we start to leverage things besides just the actual model itself? And these are some of the areas that I wanted to kind of drill down into. First, from a scheduling standpoint. So, kind of coined this or associated phrase of, design schedules or design-driven schedules. And, that's where we start to take away from a traditional light fixture schedule or diffuser schedule and start to see if we can get some additional information from the content itself, and then kind of carry that same mentality from a content standpoint into maybe some ideas of what we can do with the family. So when the families add some additional features to it, we'll say that may allow us to have a better QC process. If I was going to leverage some of the data out of those families, not only from a scheduling standpoint, but how could they assist us graphically from a design standpoint as well. Analytical systems, I was going to go through and kind of put one of those together for us, and that's actually from the new features in Revit 2021 that was released not that long ago, and a very big release and push. If you haven't seen anything about it just yet, there's a lot of information being shared currently, so I'll give some exposure to that, show you how you can build one of those systems. And then from a topic standpoint, start to wrap up with, generating a higher level of detail model and what that can potentially do for us, and what I've seen that do for companies as well. So show you how you can take a design model and turn that into, for example, a fabrication-level model, and I'm going to build some actual services and show you how to do those as well. That way you can start to apply that. And the way I've structured the presentation, I've got a couple talking point slides to go through, and then I'll jump into the software and essentially kind of show how to do some of those things related to that particular topic as well. And the first one, from a scheduling standpoint, probably the most lengthy when it gets to me actually showing those tools. I've got a lot of unique things that I can do with them, so that one will probably be expanded on the most there. But so we start to talk about design-driven schedules. So why would we want to do these? Or, first of all, what are they? Again, if I've got a typical component-based schedule where I'm either quantifying things or I'm saying, hey, this is the spec of light fixture, or this is the diffuser types that we're using for the project, a traditional schedule deliverable that you would put on a sheet. As we move away from those, we've got the ability to leverage design information inside of the schedule. So our interpretation of that is not necessarily a schedule you put on a sheet, but it's something that's being used internally to assist with the actual design process itself. And so, what are some of the reasons why we want to do this? Well, for one, you're already spending time to build the actual model itself, right? You're either modeling ductwork, piping, diffusers, lights, conduit, cable trays. So we're already putting those components in there because obviously we need to show those in a 2D representation, in a plan or in a section. We need to label those things, tag them. So we're already doing that. And what I like to tell people is typically what we see and what I've seen is that schedules in general are kind of phase 2 of a Revit implementation. Really, in my opinion, phase 1 is doing what you were doing yesterday with whatever that older software was. So if you were coming from CAD into a Revit environment, you need to be able to create structure documents, right? Get plans done, annotate, and so on. Phase two, as I like to coin it, is that's where you start to say, okay, well, let's start extracting some of the data from these objects we're drawing, right? We're laying them out there, let's go ahead and do that aspect of things. And then kind of a 2B to that, or a phase three, is this design-driven type of schedule. So we're starting to harness more of the information on the actual objects. And what that allows us to do is have, obviously, a more connected workflow, right? So if I'm staying inside the software where I'm doing the actual modeling itself, as I start to pull that data or I view that data in a design schedule, if I interact with it in that design schedule, you're making the same changes or you're viewing the same information in the model. Versus, if I was doing that in Excel, we've got a disconnected workflow there, and the fact that I may be looking at out-of-date information, it's not connected, so it's an external source. So someone is manipulating that information externally, that may not get translated into the actual model itself. So again, it just opens up that opportunity for a disconnected workflow if we're not staying integrated there. And then from a value engineering standpoint, so being able to do different design options, right? Not the functionality of design options in Revit, struggle for it to be, but being able to test out different types of systems and see results there quickly, from it. Or if I was trying to, look at flow rates or velocity, in a duct system. I can see that information, I can see where I've got some high numbers, and start to make adjustments from there. Again, probably not going to put that on a sheet to print that schedule, but it's something that I can see in front of. So that's kind of the why of the design schedule aspect of it. And not that those are the only whys, and as I talk about some of these others, it's not going to be the only reasons, but I was trying to kind of summarize it in there as well. So, what are some of the challenges that might come from implementing these types of schedules? Well, probably one of the biggest ones is going to be the content that you're using, right? So if you're modeling with a manufacturer's content or your own content or a hybrid, of the two, or you're downloading it from a third party as well, then, that content may not have the data in it that you need to pull into that type of schedule. And that's a problem not only with just a design schedule, but as you guys know that have built schedules, that's if I just want to do a line picture schedule with user schedule, right? So parameters being different, so content, right? So that is a challenge, having that content and being optimized for that end goal with it. Another one from a formula standpoint. So yes, Revit supports formulas and its schedules. Does it support every formula? No. You can get pretty in-depth with them, but it's not Excel. So in some cases, you may have some really unique calculations going on in Excel that's doing a lot of different factors that you've done for the past 17 and a half years and you're comfortable with it. If that can't be translated into Revit, it can't mimic that actual calculation, and obviously that's a challenge or problem as well. Doesn't mean that we can't do some of it, right? So you look at that actual schedule and kind of determine what you can pull inside of it. Putting, senior engineers are performing some of those design iterations and transferring that information downstream to a junior engineer or engineering training, senior engineers or operations, then we're kind of defeating the purpose, right? Talking about workflow. There's this manual interaction every that should be a challenge as well. So how can I move some of these challenges and go down this path of schedule? So one of the big things is going to be start to get what that data is you want to pull, right? So looking at that schedule around it internally, again, whether it's pad of paper that someone over and over again, whatever that is, kind of collect all of those and start to look at. What in the actually inside of it. Not saying take everything that would be that high, but if we can more automate 20% of what we're trying to do, then that really impacts our downstream well. So getting those schedules selected, seeing which ones work, or which ones you want to have first, right? And I build them in. That's a big part of it. They're hesitant about it. They don't want to do those and show them the value add. But content, getting that content established, so if you are downloading manufactured content, having a workflow in place when you're getting your company's parameters in there, or what those parameters are that are required to make those schedules function the way that you want. Getting those put into your actual Revit template or templates, or if you like to keep things external, you have a source file, or as I call it, a library project that may store only your schedules that you load into a Revit project. There's also some third parties that allow you to store external Revit data and bring it in as needed. So having those built ahead of time and then put into the actual templates. And then if we were talking about interacting with those non-Revit users, there are third-party tools that will allow you to export data from Revit into Excel, and manipulate some of that data and import it back in. So it's not, a live link by any means. So there is that manual exporting process and then that manual importing process, but at least it allows someone to interact with that particular schedule. So if I wanted to see some of this in action here, I'm going to start with HVAC. Okay, so looking at airflow, CFM, things like that, if I'm trying to pull that information in. So if I, for example, took a look at this classroom. Now, a schedule, very familiar with, like I said, if we were doing an equipment schedule or a computer schedule or something along those lines. But let's say I wanted to extract some of this space data, and pulling it out. So a calculation has been ran on this building. We did this internally, but if you ran it externally in trays for half and brought it back in, you're going to see these calculated supply airflows compared to the actual supply airflows. So if I wanted to build myself a new schedule, and I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on the schedule as well. So you might have built one of these traditional schedules here, and I'll go a different direction with it. So I'm going to go with space. Title not important. So it's going to, it's not that doing a design schedule is different than a component schedule. It's just what category you're grabbing and what actual properties you're grabbing as well. So if I want to pull this space data, let's say we'll do number, name, condition type, and we want that actual supply airflow. So looking over that parameter list where it's got that 600 CFM. And then we want our calculated, so that's the other parameter showing 400.74 CFM. So pulling that parameter as well. And then what I'm going to do is add a calculated value in here. So this is where I can put a really basic formula into this schedule. So if we went in, let's say I just did airflow check. I'm going to go the same units. That way it doesn't yell at me for inconsistent units, which still happens to me as well. But the formula for this, what I want to do here is I want to compare what the actual airflow is inside of that space against the calculated value, right? To see am I meeting that, am I not meeting that, and kind of show how we can interact with it. So if I came in and said, I want to take the actual supply airflow minus, and you can type those in too, calculated Again, if you don't get the inconsistent units there, you're good to go, kind of moving forward with it. And then from there, it's just your normal type of schedule, so whatever sorting that you want, you're going into it. Move link line there. And obviously I could go through and rename these, but for the sake of time, I'm going to leave them all in there, no big deal. The only thing I am going to do, well, let's leave this first. As I build that schedule out, this is showing me space number, space name, it's an unconditioned space type, 0 CFM, no calculated, and there's no airflow check because there's not a computed value there. So this is showing me, a lot of numbers that are in there, but nothing really jumps out to me at this point in time. So if I went back into the formatting of this, let's say we wanted to go to the airflow check and put a conditional format on it. So if you haven't done a conditional format, it tests for a certain result. So if I came in here and I say I want to test if this is less than 0 CFM, because of our equation, if I've got a minus value, that means I'm not hitting that calculator. Right? So if I define that, we've got actual, so all these are positive, look good, and then we finally get to some that are red, red, red. Now, a lot of these are red because of the fact that they had 0. Well, this one's closer. So if we look at the nurse's office, we've got the 430 calculated, so we needed 430, we've only got 300. So it's showing me a minus 130, and then it's flagging it the red for me just because of that conditional format that we put in there. So you may have seen similar schedules to this in the past, or you may have built one similar to it as well. Another spin that you could put on this, let's say you wanted to kind of better understand what was in that space and what was attributing to that actual supply airflow. So what about the diffusers that are in there? Well, some categories will let us do an embedded schedule. So if I were to say I want to embed an air terminal schedule, you can actually go in here and choose the properties that you want to make a part of it. And I'm doing this only for supply. I'm not going to return any of that. So I'm going to get a system classification so I can filter it. Type mark. I use type mark in this project, so like a supply diffuser, a 6-inch neck would be an SD1, an SD2, and so on. If you had a custom firmware that was pulling that, then you can pull that as well. And then I'm going to grab float. So just a couple parameters that are being added to it, and then I'm going to filter that. Hey, I only want the supply. So if we did supply here and go on this, we'll type it in. I'm going to sort it by that type mark. And then and I do want to itemize, that way it shows every one of those within there. And I really don't need that that system classification shown there. And again, could go through, rename headers like a normal schedule. But now if I look at this, it gives me a bit of a different appearance. So what this is saying, again, the plumbing chase, we're not going to about that. But if I look at, classroom 101, it is a heated and cooled space. Just out a little bit. So the actual supply airflow was 600, calculated 5.9. So that space was good, right? And then if we look what is in that particular space. So what are the room contents from a diffuser standpoint or a grill standpoint in there? And that's showing me I've got 4 SD2s, 150 CFM each. So if we jump down to one of these that is not, right, we're looking at these, we're short the 130 CFM, and it's because there's 2 diffusers in there and we're at 150 each. Now, something that was new in Revit 2020.1 to kind of help look at some of these schedules, we can stripe rows. And what that does is it stripes every other row. So as we get some of these busy schedules, that kind of helps break up the monotony there. And then also in 2019, if you hadn't realized it, you can hold down the control key and scroll your mouse wheel as you move on a schedule. Still can't change the row heights, but in some of the features. So again, I'm not going to put this on a sheet necessarily, but it's showing me that information in which I can view it differently, I can interact with that space, and kind of see where there might be some issues. So, Now, the embedded schedules work well. Once you kind of get the formatting done, I've built several schedules similar to this. They can get a little wild if you don't have the columns kind of arranged nicely. So it's kind of a balance between primary categories and embedded categories to make sure that it kind of makes sense logically. If you start adding a lot of fields, the schedule can get confusing to look at. But this format I found works pretty well. Now, another spin on a design schedule. So changing gears to lighting, but this kind of left of this can be spun towards any discipline, really, depending on what you want. I do not have a calculated value on a space for electrical. Okay, there is an actual lighting level on there, as I'm sure most of you know that have used Revit. So if I were to pull up a lighting plan quickly here and look at a space, there is 34-foot candles, 35-foot candles in that space right now. But there's nothing about calculation. Okay, so what I can do is actually build myself a project parameter and say I've got a target lighting level. And we gotta make sure the disciplines match up in the units, so that is the luminance. Not the group parameter under matters from a functionality standpoint, but I think that would be other percentages of rough lighting, or lux and lux, method beyond lux or meters. And I'm going to tell it that it applies to spaces. So what that would do for me now, if I looked at this space, I have this target lighting level parameter. Nothing that is kind of defining, again, I calculated, but it's up to me to kind of define that. So what you can do if you've got a standard table, or if there was an ASHRAE table 9.1, you want to have standard lighting levels based upon the space type, sure, you could look at that value on another page, and I could type 30 right there and get that value. Or something that you can build into a template is you can almost kind of predefine a lot of that information. And we can do that with what's called a key schedule. So I'm going to build another space schedule, but I'm going to tell it to schedule keys. If you've never done a key schedule, it's a way that you can predefine information, and once you assign that selection to an object, it uses that predefined information. A lot of different ways to explain that, but that's kind of what I'm doing. You can name this key. This is going to put a new parameter on that object, and it's going to call it whatever you've got right there. So you can call it space style, space key style. You can come up with your own design as well. So if I accept that, I'm going to tell it what parameters do I want to pre-populate. Now it's already going to do a key name, but I could go ahead and choose space type, because in Revit it does have the ASHRAE space types that I could choose from it. I could do condition type, which was in there, and my custom parameter of target lighting level. And again, I can pick any of these out of this list. My sorting and grouping, sort of by key name, all that stuff can stay intact. So what it's going to do is give me these columns, and it's one of the few times that I can pre-build a selection list almost. This works for equipment, this works for a lot of different things. And you do it by saying, I want to insert a data row. Right? So that data row for me is going to be whatever that selection choice that I want is. So I'll add a couple of these, and I'm going to say the space style is office. And I'm going to do one for classroom, and let's do actually let's do. So I could say that the ASHRAE space type from Revit that's defined in there, I can choose these and you can filter down. Now, a couple years back, they gave us the ability to customize and make new ones of these if they didn't exist. That was not possible. And again, if you don't do that particular parameter, I just wanted to show a few of them being populated through there. So that's going to attach its own tables and data and things like that. And I'm going to say that because obviously these are all heated.
Email for the day, the next day or that.
So here's this target lighting level. So if I did a 30 for this, 50 for the classroom, and only 10 for that. This key schedule is something that can be pre-built in a blank project, okay? So what that's going to allow me to do now is, if I go back to that lighting plan, and that is a classroom. If I clicked on that classroom, remember, target lighting level is blank, condition type is going to be whatever it was set at before, space type is just a generic building right now. So if I go up to this space style and I say, hey, here's the classroom space style, it changed space type and it graded out. That means it's being controlled by a key schedule. Same thing with heat and cool, I can't touch that. And if I go up a little bit further, I'm going to see that target value is filled out as well. So that's a way that I can kind of assign that information inside of there. And I've got this kind of master schedule here, so a whole bunch of data. Here's a little trick. I could just duplicate this schedule, and instead of having to pick all of those spaces individually, you can kind of cheat and do it with a schedule. Like, I'm going to leave it in here with this name for now, but I've got it opened up, and I'm just going to choose the field that I want in it, which is really just, for starters at least, number, name, that works, and then that really doesn't need number. Actually, I'm going to take number out of there. And I'm going to do my space style, right? My custom one that I added in there. And we'll just sort it by the name, and I'm not going to itemize every instance. This will make sense here in a moment. What that's going to do is let me see all of the manually defined space names, and it groups them all together. So instead of me having to go pick all, 47 classrooms in a plan view individually, if I just click in here, hit that pull down and choose it, that just auto-assigns it. It's almost like a type parameter in a way, but it's not a type parameter. So it's just kind of a quick way to kind of group these, and make those choices if I wanted to. So as long as the names are the same, which there may be a couple different names, right? It may say spare office, in this case nurse's office, but it's allowing me to kind of quickly go through there and make those selections in more of a batch kind of way. But not that that's a design schedule, but that's kind of a cheating way to do a mass name and push. So what can I do from that now? If I want to create a new schedule altogether from a lighting standpoint, still going down the spaces, which I could have duplicated the other schedule as well. And we're going to go similar format. What we had before, number and name, and that was average estimated illumination. That's what the candles are in the space. And then our target. And we're going to do that formula, similar to what we had on the mechanical side. Again, making sure the units are consistent here as well. And then our formula is going to be our average minus our target. So get this sorted a little bit, and then we can even do our same conditional formatting. We are Look, we've got a one-on-one classroom. We've got 39 foot candles in most of them, not all of them, and we're saying we needed 50, so we're there with that minus 11 inside of it. And, if I wanted to see where I have zeros, you could go to that particular parameter and say, hey, it equals, less than 0, shaded yellow or something to alert someone. You could certainly do that as well. But again, that target value is not controlled right there. It's done in that key schedule. So if I went back that space style schedule. This is where you would change kind of like that master value for. So let's say I did that wrong, it's not 30 inches, so I did 30 inches like office. If I change that here, then I go back to that lighting level schedule, every one of those spaces got that same change, like height and as well. Kind of a different on how we do things there. Now, one of the things from a schedule standpoint, this was added a couple of years ago, but sometimes I figured out you need ways to use this and that schedule there. So schedules, right? If you're doing MEP on a project file, then what's that going to? Obviously, that schedule list is really long. This is pretty small in this case. And what some people will do will like those design schedules, you may put an asterisk in front of them, an underscore, or you make some title case or a uppercase. Yes, that works, but you can actually do some browser organization on schedules. Again, I think it was like 2018 or so that this was added, but I do it a little bit of a different way, because if you come in here and you try to sort these, let's say you did a new one, when you came in one, this is all that you can group them by. So they won't make a category, but that's cleaner than what you may have in there traditionally. So that one. But even that can be pretty long at time, right? And some of them are not logical to what you want. So I'm going to do that for a second. Here's what I do. I will create a view template for the schedules, and I'll do it per discipline. So if I wanted to do create a view template, and I'm just going to say mechanical. And you can have it, remember as much or little as you want. Appearance, make sure they're consistent, and that's about it. I'm not going to blow all the fields, I don't want to change my mind. And then I'll do that left one as well. So your template. Not going to take any of those. I will do appearance, and then I could do one like that design schedule if I wanted to, I could go that route. But what I would end up doing is choosing every electrical schedule. We're saying we're using that for electrical, so let's do that. So I'll go ahead and apply the view template of electrical. Nothing's going to happen right there. And then I'll grab these. Yeah, following on, I won't get into mechanical. So those are applied. Well, if I build a browser organization, you'll notice in the grouping, view template is one of those choices. If I do view template, okay, set that one active. I applied it, but I forgot to assign it as default one more time. That one. I applied it, but I didn't assign it there. That was much better. Mechanical plumbing ones. So you have to apply that default view template. So by doing that, it lets you build kind of a custom grouping by discipline, which isn't a bad idea to have a view template for schedule anyways. That way you can make sure the text size is the same, the design is the same, things like that. And you can build a general one, and you can build a design schedule one. So that was design schedules, kind of taking a look at those going through there. Now, along the same lines, family graphics on a family. Family graphics added for QC or design process. And go ahead and put the audience view screen to catch up. I found that it showed me on another part. There it goes, now it's caught up. So family graphics being added for design QC. So why would I want to do something like that? Again, kind of like I said earlier, you're already built a fancy model. In this case, you're already putting those particular objects in, so whether they're lights, diffusers, equipment, etc. Why not enhance the functionality of that particular family beyond just parameters and how that thing looks in a plan view? So another reason why, as opposed to constantly looking at the schedule, which you should, this can give you a graphical alert if you're making a certain design flaw, right? So if we were overloading something along those lines. Right now, the only thing that really flags you is if you were to overload a circuit above 80%, a little warning pops up, but it lets you keep going. Why can't we have that for some other functionalities as well? So it's another reason we can catch it faster if we see it right there in front of us. And then also accountability, because of the fact that, I want my team to, and that's a big wish list I see across, is they want the users to understand what they're modeling, right? Understand the impact of that particular component. Again, whether it's a valve or a diffuser, what is it used for, and what's the information behind it. So again, from an accountability standpoint, kind of enhance availability. So what challenges? You guys hear this all the time, is content, right? So similar to the schedules, if you don't have this functionality in the content, obviously it's not going to work. Now this one is a much smaller time investment, going in and adding some of this behavior compared to adding a lot of custom parameters and things like that. And the only other real challenge that kind of popped up in my mind was people using it, or kind of following through with it. And so how could we implement that? Obviously find some key families where you think that it would provide benefit, right? So, what's something that users are constantly interacting with, that has design data attached to it that gets used over and over again. And something that comes to mind a lot is diffusers or mechanical equipment. A lot of flow characteristics on there that can be cross-checked as well. From there, once those are identified, going in and putting this behavior into those families and maybe loading them into templates as well. That way it's been optimized to go along with it, and then showing people how to use them. Now this one's a little bit more simple because it's just going to be right there in front of you, kind of alert you compared to design schedule. You might have to show users how to kind of interact with those and really drive the data. So to look at example here, wait for the screen to catch up. And we're back right there. So if I went to the floor from there, also I think it was 2020 where if you double click views, so if you slow click them, you can get the rename feature. I keep saying I'm going to change that, but if you were unaware, in your INI file, you can actually edit that INI file to make it where it doesn't do that renaming if you slow click. I feel like I don't slow click to get that feature. So just a little tip there. So let's say from a diffuser standpoint, I want to know if someone is inputting too much flow on a particular neck size diffuser. Right, so this SD2 is an 8-inch neck, if I was doing Titus or Price, whatever their flow range is. But if we looked at the box, min and max will not filled out. But again, if you get them a emitter, that's up on the top of it. Doesn't mean we can't add it, which is what I'm going to do here. So if I went into this actual family, and really it's kind of a couple parts here. We've got the data portion of it, and then we've got the graphic that I'm going to add to it as well. Now, right now I know I don't have the min and max flow, so I'm going to go under the parameters. That's the 6-inch neck. Let's see, we're going to go 70 to 40, and then the 8-inch neck. Min is going to be 90 to 170. Again, nothing's going to happen right now, but that just needs to be put in there, right? So here's the additional feature that we add, that family graphic I was referring to. I'm going to create a new family, and it's going to be a detail item. Now, you can also use generic annotation in this, and it will scale. It gets kind of crazy if you change these scales on there. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to draw a symbol that's going to pop up if someone exceeds that max flow. So what do I want that symbol to look like in here? And you can be as creative as you want. I'm just going to put a big giant circle. Now, because I'm doing it as a detail item, that is like a true size, okay? So you want to keep that in mind. If you were doing the annotation, like I said, you could take the scale factor and multiply it in there. For the sake of time, I'm just going to do that. A lot of times I'll put like the null symbol in there, but then I'm going to do a filled region that is red. Background, foreground. I should rename it. I'm not going to. There we go. So I can name this family, airflow max or something along those lines. I've also done it to where I'll do two symbols. I've done an up arrow and I've done a down arrow. So two separate families. And then you can load it into that diffuser and you can trigger the max flow with the up arrow and you can trigger the down arrow with the min flow. So if someone put a value and they're too low. It's a little complex trying to do both of those in the same family. But if I were to load it into that diffuser, drop it in there. Now you shouldn't have to align it. Years ago, we always had to align those things. I still do out of habit. And just like to see better now if I do that. So that's been locked in there at that particular location. And I made that one really big, obviously. But what I'm going to do is click on that symbol graphic, and if I link its visibility to a custom parameter, I'm going to call it max flow. Very long my name here. Again, this doesn't affect things, but when I do graphics, I something that is graphic, and I attach it to that. So now that's being controlled with its visibility through this family type here of max flow overload. So because that's the one I'm triggering, I can do a basic parameter that says, hey, if flow is greater than max flow, it's going to get controlled. So again, it goes away because that's a parameter driving it. And if I were to load that back into my project, we're going to see it'll update that family, which there shouldn't be any alerts right now, unless I put less than, and of course it would be triggered right now. So nothing's happening because that 8-inch neck diffuser, if we now look at it, it's got the min flow, it's got the max flow, so we're good unless we get above 170. Okay? So if I came in here and I did change that diffuser to, we'll just go 180, again, that circle got added into there, showing it to me. Like I said, I made that one really large, but I'll have like a null symbol going down through there. So it's a quick kind of graphical alert that lets us know that I've got that issue there. And that would come into play like if I was doing that airflow schedule, right? A wish list that a lot of people want. Let's go down to that space. That one was short. There it is, the nurse's office, right? So if I looked at that and said, okay, well, we're just going to bump this up just for the heck of it. Let's go 220 and 220. So look, I got out of the red right there because I've satisfied that flow from what was calculated. But if I go look at that now, so if I highlight it in the model, it threw that graphic on there in that nurse's office. All right, so it kind of shows that accountability tie between those two, going in there. When I do the official video, record it and post it, I'm going to do a second method that you do it within the diffuser family, and you can control the view template. So it's a bit of a different spin on it as well. All right, so I'm going to jump back for the presentation to catch up. There it goes. So next on the list here was the analytical system. So being able to, and this is new in 2020.1, being able to run and perform energy calcs within the Revit model, whether there is architectural geometry or you build your own, no matter how well it's put together, you can still run these calculations, and there's new system analysis that was built as well. And the intent behind this is so we can capture this data and build these systems without having to go through and model everything. And it's starting to pull functionality away from some of the system design programs, some of the third-party tools that may be used for some of that as well. So again, staying with that more connected workflow is allowing some of this to take place with this newest release here. What are some challenges with it? So obviously when we start talking calculations, that opens the door for, we've been doing it a certain way for an extremely long period of time. Or, I'll be honest, look at our Autodesk track record with like the heating cooling load tools in Revit that's been there. That was an acquisition back in 2012. That load calc engine has been the same since then, and it hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention. Outdoor air info and things like that were in last year. So this was really a monumental release for Autodesk, kind of opening the door again for performing the calculation. So a challenge could be, well, we didn't like how it worked before, we're going to keep doing it the old way. So that kind of transfers over to making sure that it uses the calculations that you want, which a lot of the simulation now can be customized, and we can drive those results a lot more from a fine-tuned standpoint as well. And then how? Obviously getting these in front of the right individuals to run a pilot with those, right? Being able to do some comparison loads and simulations compared to what's being done in that other program we're using now, whether that's Trace, whether that's IES or some of the other calculation tools. We're looking to leverage more of the Autodesk Insight functionality within Revit. So this was the first real door opener for Revit 2020.1. A note that I added there, so you could still build this energy. Let's say the Revit project wasn't on 2020. It was on 18 or 19. You could still model that footprint inside of Revit 2020.1, get those deliverables, and still do the actual modeling in that older version of Revit. So that simulation can be ran in the future version. Obviously, you're not sharing data backwards. That's not allowed in Revit. So it does give that ability to still run those if you needed to. Now, this was one from a time standpoint that I had removed last night, and just wanted to show what this concept really looked like. Let me pause this here. And in that official one, I'll probably do a more extended version of it. So what we gave the ability to do was build analytical systems now. And so that analytical system lets you define what that zone equipment is. And I've paused this right now. What that zone equipment is, what the actual the chilled water loop is, the hot water loop is, the type of equipment being used, so is it a fan-powered box, is it chilled beams, and actually start to build these, again, just from a graphical standpoint without model-based components. And that's what's taking place here. Those systems have been created and outlined, and based upon that, a simulation can be ran. Now, when that simulation is ran, they can be customized. Energy Plus is running in the background, so that Energy Plus code can be customized if that's your thing, if you get into that side of it. But you can do your own equipment values and parameters. That way you're driving results even further, than what we're providing as well. So that's what this is going to show here, is being able to go out and do that. So again, it's giving you those reports and giving that information before we're going down the path of building that actual model be shown. And it's at the screen, right on the screen, you catch up now. So what is shown on the screen now is there is a new path that's added to options in 2020.1 that lets us browse down and get to that location, and kind of pull into that info that being shown as well. Now, when you run that simulation, again, it is leveraging the, as I mentioned, the Insight modules in the cloud, so it is doing that cloud computation. So there's a progress bar that goes through it, and that can take 2, 3, 4 minutes, depending on the complexity of it. And I see the presentation screen finally caught up there. So you're looking at Open Studio. It's just a snapshot of it. And those are the files that can be optimized for what those equipment requirements or parameters are. But in that list that was being chosen at the beginning there, those are the two, I'll say stop ones. Those stop ones can be saved out as the customized ones as well. Now, kind of turning the corner here on this final topic as we wind down here. I know we started a little bit late, so got a little bit of time here. Higher detailed deliverables. So what am I meaning by that? So a few years back, Autodesk introduced the ability to put in fabrication parts within Revit, and those fabrication parts do have that higher level of detail associated to them. So ductwork is not one long piece of duct. It is broken out into standard duct lengths, 411, whatever, 56 1/4 the shop standard might be. Or if we're talking pipe, same thing, and putting in standard pipe lengths and how that's ordered. And it's showing more connectivity information. So we're delivering that higher end content. And why is it important? Well, if we're talking from a contractor standpoint, obviously they're going to love it. And I think we have a few of those from what I saw in the attendees list there. So being able to build those models more efficiently inside of Revit with that fabrication content obviously extends that fabrication workflow process. But from a design standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, I'm starting to see firms get more into providing that as an additional service or building small packaged mechanical systems. I've seen some skid-based mechanical rooms almost kind of being defined inside of there. And kind of opening up the door to be more of a turnkey type of solution that is being provided. Or it could be the project requirements, right? So if the BIM execution plan of the week is defining that you must show hangers and supports and duct joints and things of that nature, this particular deliverable can give you a better representation of that. And then from a coordination standpoint, obviously, if you are modeling to that level of detail, it is taking better space allocation. There's not generic fittings in the fabrication world. Unfortunately, you can use fittings with Revit that you can't find anywhere on the plans if you want to order them, but they are in the library for the standard Revit content. So what are some of the challenges associated with that detailed delivery, that delivery method there? So the fabrication modeling tools are a little bit different than normal Revit pipe and duct. They've gotten much better past couple of releases, and we are starting to go down more the path of they feel like those particular tools. From a content standpoint, yes, there is a database of fabrication content, or we call it ITMs, items. But that doesn't mean that every item is going to be available, for the manufacturer, but there's probably a good representation of one. And then as far as workflow challenges, understanding if we are doing like a design build type project or design assist project, where do we transfer from the design duct or pipe to the fabrication duct or pipe? So there's some workflows that need to be evaluated to go through them as well. So how do we produce these, or how can we get over some of these challenges here? Obviously, education comes into play, making sure you know how to use those particular tools, which, as I put there, it's kind of minimal. You get the feel for how to model with them without too much effort, more about the content. So identify what those content needs are, getting those built, or if you are working with a contractor, they may be providing that content to you. So they may share, portions of that fabrication database, and you're using that to model it. So maybe that's alleviating some of the content needs, trying to build internally. But if you are having to build that content up, obviously, that will be defined inside of it as well. So for example, if I went back into that exact same Revit project, and I'll wait. And I'm glad I found the screen to show what the audience view is, otherwise I would be minutes ahead of what we were seeing. It looks like it's different. So while that's catching up, I'll keep an eye on that. What I'm going to show, so I'm not jumping ahead on you guys here, when you install Revit, it looks to install Revit material or metric fabrication database. And that's going to give you that higher level of detailed content. You're going to see, yes, it does have, welded, threaded, copper, sweat, things like that, you can find on the side there. But it's not manufacturer specific, so you're not going to see Charlotte or Campbell or Welded or the vendors associated with any of the content. If you install Fabrication CAD MEP on your computer, which is in the AC collection, that will install the Imperial database, the Imperial content, or the metric content, not the one that has Revit. And if you install that one, I'm going to say that has a more robust data than it is brand manufacturer specific. That one that has Revit in front of it is really about the kind of like a sample to play with, whereas the Imperial content or metric content one, you can start building that a little bit more additional. And it looks like you guys' screen caught up to my little mechanical repair. So if I was to point to one of those fabrication databases, I'm going to show you how you can build something a little bit unique. So if I went with the Revit Imperial one, it's going to show what the services are in that fabrication database. So that's the term used there, services as opposed to systems. But let's say I went down and I wanted to do upward 2 inch welded by socket. Notice that it's not, cold water, hot water, supply air, return air, or any of that. It is more about, this one is set up more about the material, or in this case, the duct specification for positive 2 inch water gauge, a welded solder. So that means if I draw with that fabrication content, it's just going to be one category, no difference of systems, like we're accustomed to. So looking right now, you can see that there's a little bit of green outline on some of that pipe, a little bit of blue, on some of the other. So what I can actually do if I go into CAD MEP, so again, you can install this with the AEC collection. And I have mine running on top of AutoCAD MEP. So again, if you've never heard of Fabrication CAD MEP, you've got it in your collection, it is a different product than AutoCAD MEP. AutoCAD MEP would be like in comparison to Revit and the AutoCAD world. So if I pick that same database, that Revit Imperial one, what it's going to do is show me those exact same services, right? So like that positive 2 inch, that welded by soldered or welded by threaded, and all those are going to be defined inside of here for us to use. So what I can do to kind of enhance that is if I go into what's called the service database here, a lot of this information you don't have to worry about if you're just trying to focus on the modeling standpoint. So this is just called positive 2-inch. I'm going to create a new service. Little green button there. And I'm going to create a copy of that original one. And I'm just going to put supplied air in front of it. However you want to name that and so on. It already had the abbreviation SA, but I could do the same thing. I could repeat that. I could return air, exhaust air, free stuff, whatever I'm going to do. So if I had that defined, and then I'm going to go down to that piping one, welded by solder. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to create a new service. Yes, I'll create a copy of it. And I'm going to do chilled water. Now, you can break it down as far as you want. CHWR, if you just want a chilled water, water by solder, or chilled water supply, chilled water return, it's how you want to break up that Revit model. Now, in normal Revit piping and so on, it is broken up that far. So by me creating those, they're now in this service database, right? There's that supply air, and there is the chilled water supply, water by solder. If I go back to Revit and go into the settings of this fabrication database and I reload that, it's going to let me pick any new services that were added. Or if I just want to pull more services into it, right? So if I pull in that supply air one and I pull in that chilled water one, that gives me something to filter by. Okay, so if you rewind the times, you use Revit, for a really long time, back in 2011, prior to having pipe systems and duct systems that you build your own. We used to have to build all kinds of filters to give colors and so on. We have to go back to that with the fabrication content. So if I was looking at, the chilled water, and that is the chilled water supply there. Yep. So if I wanted to grab that chilled water supply system. So again, this is all Revit content. I'm designed for fabrication. But instead of doing that generic one, now I can do chilled water supply. Okay. Now, I didn't go through set this up, convert any unique or special way, but that is now fabrication content. There are welds in there. So I've got all that information being defined and a lot more information as well to go along with it. But if you look at the color of it, and I'm going to turn on mine when it's black, okay? And that's because inside of the category listing for the fabrication content, there's just one category. Similar to there's just one pipe, right? So what I would need to do, kind of that older methodology, create myself a new filter. And I'm going to prefix it back by fine. And I'm going to say that applies to MEP fabrication pipe work. And I'm going to say that the fabrication service equals chilled water supply. Right? So if I was building this before, I would not have any color control, any of that. Or you can do contains, chilled water supply, however you want to do it. But again, before building your own custom services, that would have been your choice there. Now, if you use that imperial or that metric, that more full database, they do have it broken out to say, chilled water supply, chilled water return. They don't tell you what connection, so they kind of like flip it. So most companies will go in and say, okay, well, we'll still go ahead and put an abbreviation, a welded by solder. That way we know, because these piping services can be different materials through there. But if I choose that now, and I add that to this particular view, and we'll give it a new color, and just give you based on that, at that point in time, it works like a standard filter in there. So it just kind of shows that you can create some of your own services that you need. Obviously, I could have went through, manipulated what fittings were being used, what valves were being used, things of that nature. front end is more about just showing that, yes, you can get into that database, and you've got access to it with CAD and MEP being installed, and generate those additional model details if necessary. All right, I'm going to toggle back over, and that puts us right about towards the end there. I don't know if we have audio in the room for any questions, or again, feel free to submit questions. Okay, looks like we're going to have some questions coming out to me. Perfect. So I can hang around as long as you guys want to, and we can talk about this. And again, if you've got to run, you got to use the restroom, coffee, refill, whatnot, we're more happy to follow up with any responses. So if you want to harass me, LinkedIn. Right, doesn't look like any questions right now, so again, please feel free to reach out to the
because we're like at the point we're just
or need clarification on anything. Have a recorded version of this, and not an official one, it'll be a little more extended as well with some of those areas. Again, apologize for any inconvenience or travel issues. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Yeah, I know. That was a tough spot, I know. It's unfortunate. I just have a quick question for this guy.
yeah, sure. Okay, I'm sure I'll see you later.
Yeah.
When you put in a space though, it doesn't recognize that automatically. So if I were to delete that space and put in like a brand new one, and you can do it, that's all it does. If I come in, it's just going to be this generic space 1 or space 165. This space naming tool was added in the default installation of Revit in 2019. Prior to that, it was a free download on the Autodesk site. But if you do space naming, that takes the architect's rooms, their name information, and replicates it into the space. So if I do an OK, they have the value, which is fine. So it took that name. So that's something that you would need to periodically run. If they're changing room names and numbers and things like that. So if you get an updated model, right, go ahead and run that. So it's just to be safe. If you're doing things early on, and we're talking energy modeling and load calculations, you can actually, yes, it's available 29 hours.
Is there any more sessions here?
If you're using 2020.1, you can actually do calculations without spaces. It can just use the geometry from the architecture, the walls and the floors and things like that. But yeah, space naming, I'm almost 100% positive it was in the default installation of a version of 2019. It's been available since 2010, but you had to go to the Autodesk site and download it. But they finally bundled it into the installation now.
Because all that Studio B and Room B is confused.
Okay, yep, fair enough.
This is what else is
Makes
there?
sense. So then, yeah, you guys would be doing spaces, because there's definitely data in here. You can leverage out of there.
This is
And then if you were if you're working in an engineer's model that they provided to
so there
you,
are two
and then you're doing
Yes, there are
fabrication
two
level
sections for
volume,
and one.
you can still have your own
Have
stamp
BNC, just
built
one
and transfer those in as well.
Yeah. And
Even if
I
you're
ended up
working
with
inside
that because of the tagging, right?
Okay, yeah, even I was just confused about that.
And things like those filters, right, like I did the filter for the trailer supply, so, and being on the trade company side of things, you don't always get to start from scratch. You're welcome, thanks for attending today.